We are joined today by Eulois Cleckley, the Department of Transportation here in Miami-Dade County. He is the director and CEO of that program, and will be transitioning into a role at the Underline in a few months. So I'm excited to have you here today. Thank you for doing this interview as we conclude this exhibit and giving us a light on where we are right now in transportation when it comes to Miami-Dade County.
Absolutely. And thank you for the invitation and happy to have this discussion.
Yes, thank you. So my first question, leading into just understanding your background, can you give me the first question is simply, where did you grow up?
So I grew up in the Washington, D.C. area, call it the DMV.
Yes.
And it's a fantastic region of this country where you get exposed to a lot. And it's home to me, and I try to venture back there as much as possible because it has a dear place in my heart. So that's where I grew up.
Definitely. Did you grow up rural or in urban lifestyle?
More in urban. Our family kind of started off on the urban side, and then we kind of continued to venture out. I actually went to high school in Virginia,
Okay.
um,
Oh,
and
wow.
we were only about 10 miles outside in the heart of the city. So, so
Okay.
got that good round DMV experience, and one of the few families that kind of hopped around in the DMV. But it's a fantastic area to live, work, and play.
It definitely is. I grew up in rural Virginia, and then went to undergrad at Virginia Commonwealth University. So I am by far the biggest DMV fan that you probably will ever meet. I still root for the University of Virginia and Virginia Tech in football. So I might have to cut this out of for all the UM fans, but go ACC.
Yeah,
Um,
actually, it's interesting. So my brother is actually he teaches at UVA. So
Okay, awesome.
yeah,
That's
so
what's up. I love that. Um, what was your public transportation experience growing up?
so you're definitely growing in the DMV area, growing up in the DMV area, you're exposed very early on to how you get around using public transportation. So whether it be
Mhm.
WMATA, which is the regional transportation provider and transit provider for DC, Maryland, Virginia. So you're always exposed to the metro system, the rail system there, as well as the bus system.
Yeah.
Also in the other jurisdictions, there are other municipal operations that provide you great connection on the Virginia side as well as the Maryland side. And so
Mhm.
it's a part of your life in terms of how you get around in the DMV area. So uh,
Mhm.
Washington, D.C. has always been known to have a very efficient transit system, and it continues to grow. I mentioned I went to high school in Virginia. What's interesting, growing up, there, I was able to get to my high school. We basically had my high school was about 2 blocks away from a metro rail station. And that
Mhm.
same metro rail station actually got extended further west, going all the way out to the Dulles International Airport. And so yeah, it's been great to see the expansion of public transportation and the continued investment in the DMV area.
Definitely. I know that you went to North Carolina A&T and HBCU, and your degrees are in transportation and economics. Did your degrees decide your career path, or did your passion for these two areas lead you into your career path?
Yeah, little bit of both, as well as transportation is kind of in our family, and so my father actually had a position with the U.S. Department of Transportation, and he was more on the environmental side. My mindset and my way of thinking is more on the business side of the
Mhm.
thing of the industry, and so that's how I was one educated on that aspect of it, and which has helped me tremendously because I've had multiple opportunities to be on the public and private sector side of the industry. And so uh, the beautiful thing about the best and largest HBCU in the country, North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride, what's
Yes.
the Transportation Institute, and you get to learn all aspects of the industry. And so it really does prepare you, whether you want to go into uh, the business aspect, which is what I did initially when I got out of school, which is to
Hmm.
actually go and work on the supply chain and logistics side for large companies, or it prepares you to go into the public sector as well,
Hmm.
to understand those different elements if you're working in the public sector around policy, transportation law, and engineering, as well as just overall planning from an urban or even a rural perspective around transportation infrastructure. So I always, anytime that I have the opportunity to talk about how fantastic A&T is, I take that opportunity, and I'll really always encourage folks to consider transportation as an industry to go into in terms of your career, because regardless of your background, you're going to find a spot and a place in great positions that can have a very long career in the industry if you focus on transportation moving
Hmm.
forward. And so, and if you do so, always consider HBCU or consider North Carolina A&T, of course, as your first option. And if not, of course, you can choose VCU or any other institution as well.
Yes, for sure. You've held some prestigious positions in your career, Chief of Statewide and Regional Planning, Acting Chief of the Field Operations Division in DC, U.S. Department of Transportation, and you were the founder of a nonprofit that focused on community and business engagement. Um, what about these positions help shape you for your way of finding yourself in Miami-Dade County?
So working for the Washington, D.C. Department of Transportation was a great experience. Washington, D.C. at that time was a transitioning city. And so
Mm-hmm.
DC has a long history, as I'm sure you're aware of the way in which people lived in DC proper itself, and now in the 60s and 70s and 80s, how that city completely transitioned from being more of a demographically mixed type of environment and community to one that ended up being truly chocolate city, where you had about 80 to 90% of the residents there that were Black and African American. And so there was a reason for that happening. And
Mm-hmm.
and that happened because of in 1968, because of the riots of Dr. Martin Luther King. You had white flight, and which fundamentally changed the way DC at that time was. But when I came in at that particular
Mm-hmm.
time, it was interesting to see now kind of a reversal in terms of migration, that you have so many people that moved to the suburbs that started to come back in, and they looked a
Yeah.
little bit different than the people that were there traditionally. And so inevitably, what you run into? Gentrification, those
Mm-hmm.
kind of clashes of those types of desires from two different cultures as well as socio-demographic backgrounds. And so the District Department of Transportation was tasked with making sure that we were building out supportive infrastructure to keep up with those migration patterns and then that explosion of growth, especially in the inner core of the city. And to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that not only moving people, but you're building out an infrastructure to move people regardless of the mode that they choose. And so being a part of that, I would say that it's what some would call it kind of a renaissance and a changing of what the city looked like was very
Mm-hmm.
interesting and very exciting in terms of that level of experience. And that's been something I've taken with me to my other positions, because we dealt with everything. We dealt with everything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and and at the same time, I had a passion based off of what I saw with respect to all of these great projects that we were working on in DC, and a lack of involvement from small and minority owned businesses in the DMV area. And it was a little bit surprised, because that is the DMV is a burgeoning area where you have a lot of great businesses that are minority owned and are
Mm-hmm.
doing very well and are flourishing. But in the transportation infrastructure space, when we would go to either planning meetings or go to other economic development meetings around transportation infrastructure, you would look around the room and you would, one, see very limited amount of participation from minority and underserved communities on these planning decisions. And the same thing on the
Yes.
business side, where you would just see a lack of participation for businesses on these great projects moving
Mm-hmm.
forward. So I saw that there was a gap, and we kind of worked with a couple of good mentors and partners there, and we started a nonprofit where we focused on educating the public around these transportation projects and how they needed to be involved and participate in the planning process and
Mm-hmm.
guide and make decisions that impacted them. And then
Yes.
also we focus on trying to see if there are ways to develop small business partnerships with some of the larger firms so they can get that piece of the pie when these contracts came out for these larger projects as well. So it was fulfilling work, it was hard work because it was trying to fill the space, but that's how we kind of started the nonprofit, and we're able to make some inroads in a couple of projects there in the region.
That's amazing and awesome. Um, between all of the places you have been, what is one of the commonalities between these areas, and how do they differ from what you saw in DC and other areas you've been in compared to Miami?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting. Moved around quite a bit, and people, as you kind of go into these new environments, they always say, "Oh, things are so bad in this particular city, or it's kind of crazy." And I tell folks, I was like, "I've heard this before. It's the same kind of refrain no matter where you go,
Mm-hmm.
because the same issues exist. Because around transportation and mobility, uh, everybody has their own way of how they get around. So if you really think about the fact that in Miami there's 2.8 million people,
Yeah.
you have 2.8 million commute patterns that are different. In Washington, D.C., we had about 800,000 people when I was there. It's the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
800,000 ways in which people get around in that region. So you're always going to have challenges, and not everybody uses the same mode of transportation to get around, but they're all relying on the infrastructure or services that are being provided by the respective departments that I work with and worked in those particular positions. And so everything that people complain about in Miami is the exact same thing that people complain about in Denver, is the exact same thing that people complain about in DC and every other place. And
Yeah.
what I always tell people is that the responsibility, if you're working for a municipal government or state government or regional or county government, is your
Mm-hmm.
job is to figure out ways that you can provide options for people to be able to choose how they want to get around. And that option should be safe and efficient and be one that people can comparatively choose,
Mm-hmm.
that is one that is competitive with people just getting in their car by themselves to get around. So it's really every place that has jobs and people, you're gonna experience some level of traffic and delay due to that traffic. So the key is not to just relegate everybody in a particular community to just one way of getting around. So if I want to
Mm-hmm.
drive one day, that's great. We want to try to create as much efficiencies with people driving. But if I want to choose to take a bus or take a train or bike to work or walk to work, I should be able to do so.
Mm-hmm.
And it should be able to get to the places of employment or places of leisure in that same safe and efficient manner. So at the end of the day, every city is grappling with that same thing, and you're trying to provide a balanced infrastructure where everybody can benefit from, regardless of the mode that they actually choose to get around.
Yeah. That is, that's a lot to consider in all of that planning work that goes into the different avenues, the different modes of transportation. I have been in Miami for 20 years now, and I truly have seen so many changes when it comes to public transportation in that time, the flow of traffic patterns. Um, I personally own a vehicle. When I decided to make the move down here, I was at a position, my parents were like, "So what are you gonna do?" And I was like, I just looked up because I moved down to go to Barry University.
Okay.
So I looked at where grad housing was that I would be and the distance from the school. And it would take me about an hour and a half between getting off of the 79th Street Causeway and back to Barry's campus on a good day, right? And so once I looked that up, I said, I need to take the car. I need to take a car with me because I'm not doing that. Like, right? And I have full confidence in public transportation. But in that moment, I was like, there's no way I could get around Miami without having my own vehicle. Um, but since then, we have a trolley system. We have upgraded the bus system here. The jitneys this was my first experience seeing those. We only had public buses in Richmond, so we didn't have all of these other add-ons to make sure people got around. How long have you been in South Florida, and what have you observed about the transportation patterns during your time here?
Sure. So I've been in South Florida for 3.5 years.
Mhm.
And I would agree with you that there's been improvements to public transportation, whether it be the services that we provide here at the Department of Transportation and Public Works, all the way through our municipal partners who are trying to figure out ways to improve the municipal trolley services and the like, to engaging with even a private industry to figure out how we can have additional supportive services such as on-demand transportation and the like that can provide supplemental services from our public transportation gaps that we currently have that you are articulated previously. And so, well, my experience, and I make my decisions in terms of where I live based on proximity to, of course, your workplace, but also
Mhm.
to how easy it is to use public transportation to get you to where you need to go.
Mhm.
It's interesting, when I moved here from Denver. I didn't have a car in Denver.
Yeah.
And when I moved here, I was contemplating whether or not I needed to have a vehicle or not. And I realized, after a couple of visits that, yeah, I'm probably gonna have to have a vehicle to get a little bit different environment here.
Yeah.
But in terms of my daily commute patterns, I don't drive, so I'm blessed to have the opportunity to be able to take either a bus, to
Hmm.
take Metro Mover, or even bike to work, which uh, you know uh, depending on what I have to do for that particular day, from time to time
Hmm.
I'll end up doing. And that's again going back to what I mentioned before, is having those options available to you that you don't have to rely on getting in your vehicle. I've tried to make those personal decisions around where I live, and to
Hmm.
be in proximity to public transportation, so I can ease my commute. I think we do have some opportunities that we're definitely working on as a department to improve our existing service, but also add in more mass transit options.
Hmm.
And I'm sure we'll talk about a little bit later about what those are, but that's the future of Miami. And as you have more people that are moving to South Florida, it's imperative that the region moves forward as fast as we can to build out additional mobility options that people can take
Hmm.
advantage of. And by doing so, you can have that sustainable environment for our business community and our residents as well. So yeah, and also being in my role, taking public transportation, I get to see the good things and the bad things, and
Yes.
being kind of on the ground, get those opportunities to fix them through our staff and our great team as quickly as possible. So I've always have made it a point to make sure that I get around using public transit and transportation.
And that's amazing to me. Um, Being in the role that you are in, it is so refreshing to hear that you take public transportation, because that was my next question. What's your current relationship with public transportation? you take it on your commutes. You have that it's a luxury, right? To live close to where you work and to have the modes of transportation to get you there. So Metro Mover here, very quick around the downtown area in Miami. You have buses, you have all those things at your fingertips to do your commute to work and other areas in the city. So people watching this know that the people that are working at the top are taking transportation and they are looking and seeing what you experience every day. That is refreshing to me, to just know that you're not riding around in a in a car
Yeah.
and not touching public transportation at all, because that's what most people would assume. You have this high position, why would they get on public transportation? So you blend in with those that are also commuting. So that has to be commended, and for people to understand, like the people in your department, because you are not the only one that takes public transportation. Um, they take it, they see it, they experience it, and they also get to see what needs to be improved directly because you're actually using the services.
100%. And I appreciate that. And we have multiple people on our executive team that do take transit as well. And to me, I it's two fronts, right? So when the general public, as a user of your
Mm-hmm.
service that you're in charge of, when we're always going to have situations where we might have missed trips, so we might have issues that turn into complaints that we need to address.
Mm-hmm.
You have to relate to those issues from your user. And so if you're not using that service, sometimes the leadership from executive level can't make that connection. They can understand when you miss a trip or you have a delay in the system or the user doesn't feel that the experience is great. If you don't take it yourself, then you don't understand what that particular resident is talking about. So you need to get on the
Mm-hmm.
system, and then you start to notice, like, okay, now I get it. And
Mm-hmm.
what we've done is that we actually go and we have assigned ambassadors from all of our leadership to become people that are responsible for all of our Metro Rail stations and Metro Mover stations. And so we do site and field visits. And so when we go to these field visits, we say, this is wrong, this is broken, this is the issue that needs to be fixed, go fix it. And our facilities team gets right on it and goes fix it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
important because the user experience is extremely vital to people feeling comfortable and safe and being heard that, okay, if I complain about this, the department is going to respond effectively. And
Yes.
what happens is that then people end up taking your service and more people end up taking your service. You increase your ridership, you increase revenue, and it just starts to magnify itself. And so that starts from a leadership standpoint. And so we made it a point to make sure myself that I'm seen or I'm going and taking the service for our general public. But also
Mm-hmm.
we have 4,000 people that work for the department. About half of that are people that are bus operators, train operators, people working in the field. And these people are working hard every single day. And I consider them as just as vital as our first responders.
Mm-hmm.
They are really delivering service that impacts people's lives, places of
Yes.
employment, and their jobs are extremely important. And so to also experience what they see out in the field on their day-to-day jobs is important. So the leadership respects what they do, and they
Mm-hmm.
understand they have an issue that we need to address, that we're familiar with their operating environment, and that we figure out ways to address them effectively. So it kind of goes both ways. That you're addressing the public issues, but you're also helping to support the staff that are providing this vital service as well.
Definitely. Um, do you feel that our transportation system is safe?
Absolutely. And again, taking transit in the DC area and other areas, I can tell you that here in Miami, we have one of the safest public transportation systems in the country. And in fact, we've seen a significant decrease in a number of incidences that we have either on Metro Bus or Metro Mover over the past 3 years. COVID was a very uh, uh, interesting time where a lot of transit agencies experienced significant issues around safety. Um,
Yes.
as people can understand, but crime as well, right? Just because of the nature of what was going on. But
Mm-hmm.
since COVID, we've seen a sharp decrease in a number of what we call part one and part two crimes across our system. Uh, uh, to the extent where we're a month over month, we'll have zero incidents of crime, whether it be Metro Mover and a lot of our Metro rail stations and the like. I'm not saying that incidents don't happen, but to the
Yeah.
magnitude and to the intensity of them, it's decreased significantly. So we're very proud of that. We do have a strong focus on safety as well as security. We do partner
Mm-hmm.
with our police department as well for the county, and they assist us as well. And we try to make sure that the experience is one that's safe, that everybody feels comfortable taking a bus, taking a train to get to where they need to go. So you compare us to other similar sized transit agencies or even the larger agencies, we're far above from a safety standpoint some of our partner agencies, and so we're proud of that.
Definitely. That's awesome. You said part one and part two safety. What what does that mean?
Yeah. It's just a level of violence
Okay.
associated with crime. And for example, we have folks that tend to express themselves through art, providing artwork on our facilities. Like, so we have graffiti and, somebody might, break a lamp or something like that. That's really not a serious crime, but we get those.
Mm-hmm.
The other crime category is that if there's an assault on the
Yes.
system or something that's more violent in nature. And so the number of violent crimes, whether it be theft or assault, has decreased dramatically. And so a lot of what we see are just people vandalizing our system for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to find preventive measures to even address that. Even how the station is designed, how we work with our personnel, our protection officers there that are stationed at the Metro Rail and Metro Mover stations in terms of how they roam and patrol the station. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we last year we got a new contract with our protection officers that are stationed at our Metro Rail and Metro Mover stations, and they are responsible for doing tours of the station. So you'll see them
Okay.
walking around, and they'll actually have the ability to kind of check in at certain points where they're checking all of our doors and making sure that they're secure, so we're not having random people come in. They're checking the elevators, whether or not they're working. They're checking the traveler and passenger information that's on our transit screens and whether or not they're working or not, or checking whether or not to see there's graffiti. As soon as they
Mm-hmm.
check, they send that information in to our folks, and we respond accordingly. Those are preventative measures that you have, or you always have somebody that's watching um, physically at one of our stations, but also we have our TV cameras that are providing a feed where we have people in our operations center that are always monitoring our stations to make sure that they're safe and we're preventing any issues from happening. So rest assured, everybody out there that you're taking the system, that we are very much focused on making sure that all of our passengers feel safe and they feel
Mm-hmm.
secure, and we have the staff and the technology to support that.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. Because I think that does help explain and help people feel safe, knowing that people are watching and reporting, because reporting is that piece that some of us may call snitching, but we all want to live in a safe community. And so part of that is having these systems in place, having the cameras in place, because you want to feel safe moving around the city. And we want to make sure that you are safe. So thank you for that answer. Um, as an executive, what or who is the priority when you're planning in transportation?
So we have a vision that we worked on and we created, that I worked with the staff on internally, when I first started in this role here in Miami. And our vision is to be the world's best provider of transportation options. And
Okay.
it's a lofty goal. I tell people that's an aspirational goal, but really what it's about is encouraging our staff every day to come in and
Mhm.
work hard to meet that vision. Part of that visioning exercise is that we sat down and we said, okay, who uses our system?
Mhm.
When I say who uses our system, think about the different, again, commute patterns and the different people that commute and rely on our transit system. And so we came up with a list of our user type. And it's everything from the student that's trying to go either to Barry University or UM or to Miami-Dade College,
Yeah.
to the single mother that's
Mhm.
trying to one, figure out a way to get their child to daycare and then get to work,
Yes.
to the elderly parent or the elderly person that is trying to figure out a way to get to the hospital or get to a place where they can get their medicine or get their dialysis, what their experience is. We went through that exercise because if you don't
Mhm.
understand the user and what their background is and what their needs are, how are you then tailoring and planning for the mobility services that you're supposed to provide as a department? So we went through that whole
Yes.
exercise and we put names on it and we gave every single user a story. And we said, okay, if we're making this decision, how is this helping, again, the single mother that's got two kids that has to figure out a way to get to work and drop their kids off at daycare? How's it going to help out
Mhm.
the visitor that's coming from the Netherlands coming to Miami, right? So we need to understand that. And that's the basis of what and how we plan for. So it starts and it ends with the people and the communities that we're trying to serve. On
Mhm.
top of that, the one piece that we always have to be understanding of is that we might have gaps in our infrastructure or gaps in our services. So
Okay.
how do we figure out ways to identify those gaps, identify those solutions, and then properly fund and or work with partners to be able to address those gaps? So that's our responsibility in the public sector. At the end of the day, we are here to make sure that the public transit system that we provide is providing not only one of those options that I mentioned before, but is making the lives of people that live here and work here and play here better, and then people feel that they can rely on our system for them to be able to get around.
For sure. And I feel like you got a pre-list of my questions, based on the answer you just gave, because my next question is, what agencies do you have to plan with in your current role to make all these systems work?
Sure. So we can't do any of this without having good solid partnerships. And so
Mhm.
first, it starts with the administration, the common administration, and internally, but also with our board of county commissioners. They're the ones that make a lot of the decisions, whether it be contracts or ideas that we have about service improvements and the like. And so between kind of the executive branch of the county and the legislative branch, we have to be aligned to be able to deliver all this for the county. But we do
Mhm.
have great partnerships with the Florida Department of Transportation, District 6, as well as District 4. A lot of our roadways are, of course, our municipal roadways, but
Mhm.
also our county roadways and our state roadways and the like. And so, making sure that we're working with the state, we're especially on the way that we are working with them to expand our transit, our mass transit system is extremely important. And also working with our municipalities. We have 34 municipalities within the county. Each one have, of course, have streets and transportation
Mhm.
infrastructure and or services. And so coordinating with them effectively to make sure we have a seamless experience for our users is extremely important. So we have to build and continue to coordinate and cultivate those types of partnerships. But also we work with what we call the Transportation Planning Organization, the
Mhm.
TPO. The TPO is actually made up of a governing board of our 13 county commissioners plus small and large municipalities within the region. And so we get a lot of our federal dollars in consultation and coordination with the Transportation Planning Organization.
Mhm.
And then we work with our other partners regionally. And so as an example, Tri-Rail, which is it's a service that is provided by the South Florida Transportation Administration or agency, I'm sorry, SFRTA. They
Okay.
provide rail service. That's a regional rail service that provides connection all the way up through the three-county South Florida region. We coordinate with Broward County and West Palm Beach as well on not only Metro bus services that are in the northern part of the county, but also on upcoming mass transit expansion that we have for commuter rail going
Yes.
up to Broward as well as West Palm. So it's truly a regional effort. Transportation doesn't is not confined to any boundary or county boundary or
Mhm.
municipal boundary. So you have to work together as a region with different stakeholders to be able to try to achieve this mobility goal to provide those different types of options. And so those are just
Mhm.
examples of the stakeholders that we have. And the last one I'll mention is that uh, we often have fantastic opportunities to actually have developers come in
Mhm.
and develop mixed use and create mixed use development adjacent to our Metro Rail and Metro Mover stations. And even
Mhm.
some of our bus intermodal facilities and our BRT, bus rapid transit stations that we're building down south to come in and help provide that better nexus and connection between public transit and where people live. And so
Yes.
these developers are coming in building hundreds of residential units. A lot of the projects are projects that we help actually scope and make sure that we
Mhm.
have affordability built into those projects.
Mhm.
Um, and then also provide improvements to our transit system. So again, we can have better land use planning and the connection between land use and transit moving forward. So there's public sector, municipal stakeholders and partners, and then also from the private sector side, from a development community, we have to work with them to make sure we address these mobility challenges.